In this video, let's take a look at the black valve compressor. Now, this is a compressor that emulates an analog style compressor, and with an analog compressor, they impart a color onto the sound, including the compression. So you use it to give a sort of tonal quality to your sound, as opposed to your stock compressors that may be not adding as much color to the sound. So taking a look at the parameters, first off, you've got drive. So this adds tube saturation into the compressor before it applies the compression settings. Then you got the gain, which is after the tube section. So this gains the level up. The peak reduction is the amount of compression that you want to apply. And as you increase this up, you'll see your gain reduction meter where you can see the amount of compression that's being applied. Then you've got a dry wet. So you can mix your dry signal with your wet signal, giving you that parallel processed effect. And then finally, you've got an output. So as you add compression, there's going to be some gain reduction, and you want to make up for this using the output. And as well, you've got the input and output meters. So you can see the level before the compression and then the level after. Now, I want to apply this onto a guitar track here. So I'm just going to bypass it for now so you can hear the unprocessed guitar. So it's sort of this just little funky guitar piece. It's using an instance of the VST amp rack using a clean style amp over here. And then after that, we're going into the compression. So let's play this back and I'll show you what these parameters do. So I'm going to increase the drive to add some tube saturation. You can hear how that's saturating the sound. So now let's move over here. I can increase the gain mount. But before doing that, let's first apply some compression. So as I apply the compression, you can see the gain reduction meter. I'm going to go for quite a heavy compression setting. So I'm getting about minus 10 dB of gain reduction. I can add some more gain here. So it's sounding very heavily compressed. And as you can see, my level is at minus 0.2 and it's at 3.2. So I can use the output to drop this level and click here to reset that. Now, this is quite heavy. So what you might want to do is actually just mix this in with the dry processed. So here is unprocessed, and then blend this in. Maybe pull back on this drive a bit, and the gain. So before, hearing it before, it sounds very, very dry. But as it comes back again, let's add in the compression. Definitely a lot more livelier with this compression. You can hear that character with the tube saturation, and that compression is just helping evening out those dynamics between the softest and loudest signals. By applying quite heavy compression, you can sort of bring those a bit closer and have a more solid level. And with this dry and wet, as you saw, I mixed this in so I could decide how much of the dry versus the heavy process compression I could apply. So that is using it on a guitar. Let's take a look on some other instruments. So for example, over here, I've got some drums. They sound like this before I add any of the black valve. Okay, so a nice acoustic drum kit. So let's add an instance of the black valve. It's under the Steinberg Dynamics and black valve over here. And here I want to do the same. I want to add a heavy compressed sound using that tube saturation to color the drums. And then I'm going to blend between the dry and processed sound. So first, I'm going to leave the wet set all the way to 100% and dial in a heavy compressed drum sound. Getting that tube saturation. Increase this gain going into the compressor. Maybe pull back on this output. Gain it up quite a bit. And now let's add in some compression. You can see the gain meter over here. So you're squashing the dynamics, but it's got a nice energy to it. So let's pull back on the dry wet. So that's the original drums. Sounds nice. But you definitely get that lively effect with that heavy compression. So I'm going to pull it in again. 50% is way too much. Just pull it back maybe to about 30%. Yeah, that is very nice. That drive definitely adding some saturation to the drums. So before it was like this. It sounds okay, but you definitely get way more energy with it quite processed and mixed in. Even a little goes a long way. This is dry. Just adding some color in. So even at about 26%, you're getting that color of this analog compression on your sound. With the heavy applied dry wet mix, you're hearing more of that room being compressed. Now let's move over onto one more instrument and then we'll compare them all together. So over here, I've got a bass guitar that sounds like this. Now let's add an instance of the Black Valve. So what you obviously would have noticed is with this peak reduction, you don't have a ratio and attack and release. So you've got a very simplified form of parameters here where you're actually just using the peak reduction that's dialing in the compression and attack and release. So starting off, let's drive some saturation into the bass. Now let's add in some compression till we get about minus 10 dB of gain reduction. Yeah, that's good. Maybe gain into the compressor a bit more. Might need to pull back a bit on this output. Just comparing the two. Push more drive into that. So this is the dry sound. And then blend it in. Something nice, about 50% there. So just comparing everything before when we didn't have any of the compression. So I'm just going to bypass those. It sounded like this. Now with the compression. This guitar, maybe I just want to pan it to the left and pull down the level and pull up that bass. So you're definitely getting a lot more energy and color from that compression on the mix. So that is how to use this Black Valve compressor to help you control the dynamics and to color the sound with that saturation that's being pushed into the compressor.